Hi everyone, welcome back to Jola Speaks, and thank you for joining me once again today. So we're going to continue the Jola Speaks interviews again today, and we're going to be looking at intimacy. Intimacy is is Esther's mission, bringing people back to the intimacy relationship with God, right? And today we discuss intimacy. We discuss intimacy in relationships, vulnerability as well. And I know that you will definitely be blessed, because I was blessed. So please join me as we dive in.
Yes, that's a very interesting one. And just to go to the next topic, which is going to be intimacy in relationship. Now, you discussed a bit about intimacy with God right now, right? But what I found, and even just looking at your birthday, like a lot of the conversation that came out was how you are able to be vulnerable. And me personally, when I look at my experience with you, I feel like the reason why we're here today, why we are so close, is because you're able to be vulnerable with me. How have you been able to maintain that vulnerability? How do you grow your relationship and be able to, take that first, huge step of vulnerability? You know what? I'm going to model vulnerability to this person, right? And even when things don't pan out as you expect, how do you be able to guard your heart, right? And still continue to be vulnerable as well, even to those people and even other people as well.
So the interesting thing was that in 2014, I became a Christian at age 5, but then I entered into my intimacy journey with God in August 2014. And one of the things that the Lord said to me was that I want you to model vulnerability to my children. I was not a vulnerable person. I promise you. You can ask your husband, your body could they are. Vulnerability is not me. I used to say then that 4 people knew my life's gist, and they knew it in segments. So if anything came out, I knew exactly which of the 4 Julia said it. Exactly. So that shows you how vulnerable you. There's a word like that. I was not, right? And then when the Lord said it, I was like, okay, because it's like if you're going to invite people into intimacy with me, you have to model it first. And the way you model it is with vulnerability. And I think that He made me make a lot of uncomfortable choices, right? And it was a decision to obey or not to obey. Yeah. And I think that the more you obey, it's not that it becomes easier, but you now realize just how high the stakes are, because you now see what the fruit of vulnerability is. When I looked at the room on Friday on my 40th birthday and I saw the people that were there, I realized that 3/4 of that room were there as a result of my vulnerability. And we'll never know the opportunity cost of not obeying God. A lot of times when God asks us to do something, we think that it's just based on that instruction alone. We don't realize that there's so many things that are a knock-on effect from that simple yes of obedience. And so in terms of guarding my heart, it has been hard. Vulnerability is hard. And it is hard in a society where it is seen as a weakness, right? But we have to realize that vulnerability is actually a superpower.
Strength.
It's a strength. And not a lot of people will appreciate it, but the ones that do make up for the ones that don't. And so, but even beyond that, I never do anything for human beings. As much as it sounds, I don't do anything looking at anybody's face. I do it because I am first and foremost responsible and accountable to the Lord who saved me. So if no human being has saved me, do you understand? Then I don't owe them anything. But the one that has saved me and has kept me and preserved me, that's what He wants from me. Then as hard as it is, that's what I must give.
That's very powerful, because with that, whatever anybody does to you, doesn't really matter. Your focus is on God has sent me. Because attitude is I will do exactly what God has asked me to do.
And when I'm crying, it's to Him I cry to, because I'm like, I was by myself. Then when you called me, you're the one that has me today is in now. So you must be in my heart, please.
Yes.
So that's how I navigate that.
That's very powerful. And perhaps we'll also discuss walls. We discuss this in conversations. You had unicorn course that discussed, walls. A lot of us build walls, well, not even realize, and discuss quite extensively. Now, yes, walls have gone up, right? I know you also had walls as well. How was your process of bringing down those walls?
That's a very interestingly general question. I think to talk about the process of bringing down walls, we must talk about how walls come. Yeah. And walls are a defense system, right? And so walls come, so if you look at even Genesis 3, right? When Adam and Eve fell, Immediately, the Bible says their eyes were opened. And what happened? Fear. How did this happen? Shame. How did we let this happen? Control. Fig leaves. I have to make sure that this never happens again. And so you find that walls are built when there's a combination of fear and shame that leads to control. So when you are younger and you go through certain things, right? You go through either traumatic experiences, abuse, or whatever it is, your first instinct is, hey, don't get me, Sha, they got me. Do you get? Next thing is shame. How did I let this happen? Then is the question, control. This can never happen to me again. And so we now begin to build our own equivalent of whatever walls are, fig leaves are. We begin to protect ourselves, whether with degrees, with clothing, with ambition, with protection. So there's some people that are talking to exactly your career, whatever it is like you will never find me in that position of vulnerability again. And you may say, but what's wrong with that? The issue is that we're never meant to cover ourselves. God is the one that is supposed to cover us. And so anything that prevents us from allowing God to cover us is something that we must guard against. You now realize that the solution to walls then is to hand over your life to God. But there's a problem. Because for a lot of people, the question now becomes, but God, where were you when those things were happening that necessitated me to build or feel like I needed to protect myself? So before you can even begin to dismantle walls, you must have an honest conversation with God. God, if you're so good, then why? Now we have been taught in church that you cannot question God, and that is true. You cannot question the character of God, but you can ask him questions. Lord, I know that you are good. I know that you are kind. But these things that happen to me does not show goodness or kindness. Lord, give me your perspective. It is only when you are able to have those honest conversations with God that you can get God's perspective and then trust him enough to give him those walls and say, Lord, I want to embrace vulnerability with you. A lot of times people want to piggyback to dismantling the walls without having honest conversations. It cannot work. It won't work. All you have is like you're putting a band-aid on a wound, do you get? And it's not going to heal. Air must enter that wound, do you get? It must be debrided, There was a while ago, a close family member had a wound that wouldn't heal, right? And one of the ways that they were able to treat that wound was they did something called debriding. And I never heard of that until there. And debriding literally means you take off the scabs, you take off the dirt that is covering the wound, and then the wound is now clear enough, it's free for the medicine to be able to enter. If you don't do that work, you will not be able, to allow medicine to enter, to allow God's healing power to enter into your life. Yeah. And so we must have that honest conversation is the process of debriding so that you can now be free to heal as God will intend you to.
That's very powerful. I think it's just a reminder to always remember to have that honest conversation with God. Because most I do probably run from a conversation because they don't want to start to face the wall. That I probably also don't want to bring down those walls. Like it's safety net. Why am I, going to perfect in this area? But for us, that also when you do that, you also not pull out push away God from your life as well.
You see, even in whatever intimacy and relationship building in the will of God, there are times when I've been so hurt by people, so hurt. And I'm like, God, I'm closing up. First of all, because I have a problem with you, because you're the one able to experience this. And then God will show me in a dream, me and the person, doing life together. And I'm like, what's going on? What a dream. Do you understand? But is God saying, you cannot close the door when I'm not closed the door? A lot of times people ask me questions, when is it time to say deuces to a relationship? When it's time to lock the door? Do you get cut somebody or cut somebody? I'm like, has God cut you off?
Has God cut you off?
God cut you off? There's no biblical representation of Jesus or God cutting a person off unless they cut themselves off themselves. I was thinking about it this morning that the same grace that was given to Peter was also available to Judas. It was Judas that made the decision. If Judas had repented, he would have been taken back. He would have. That's so true. He's the one that made the decisions that I messed up. Yes. So if we now realize that even Jesus himself never cut anybody off or cast, I'm not saying that don't operate with discernment, restraint, or wisdom. I'm just saying that this thing that I want to cut people off, throw people away, show me where it's modeled in the Bible.
All those things. Yeah.
Doesn't show me where it's modeled in the Bible. Even Job and his 3 friends that were told that, oh, Jiggers, that the Lord himself rebuked them. Job did not cut them off. They were rebuked and they continued doing life together.
Yes, that's so true.
So we have to be careful where we get some of our doctrinal things from.
When Job prayed for his friend, that was when God answered him.
Restore him.
That's a powerful one. And Jesus knew Judas. He knew what he would do. Mm-hmm. He knew everything. Yes. He cut him off. It's very powerful.
So thank you for watching this interview. I think it's important to discuss vulnerability and how it is a strength, even no matter what the society is saying about vulnerability. And as you are intimate with God, you're trusting God. We also have to be open and intimate in our own relationships as well. I also like what Esther said about, guarding one's heart. Yes, people would hurt you. When you are going to be vulnerable, they're definitely, no one is perfect. People will hurt you, right? But, one cannot decide to cut somebody off because they got hurt, because God didn't cut you or I off. So let's always have that at the back of our mind, to always learn to forgive, even if people hurt us in the ways that they hurt us, because no one is perfect, right? We're all striving to be better every single day. But then let that not stop us from intimacy, with people, and also even with the person that may have hurt us as well. Let's not cut away from our lives because of how they may have treated us or made us feel. And I like the example of Jesus and Judas, right? Jesus knew that Judas would definitely betray him, but he was in his life. He didn't cut him off. He was one of his disciples, and he kept going. So God help us, in this case, in Jesus' name, amen. So thank you for listening to me today. God bless you, and I love you. Bye.